Sobbing, I stomped my foot. No, I won't go. My parents had just told me the devastating news that we were moving from Virginia to Nebraska. I was nearing the end of a wonderful year in the 7th grade. Good friends, good grades, the lead in the play, and a spot in the selective choir. In an effort to console me, my mother said, "You love the Little House on the Prairie books. This will be your very own westward journey." I did love reading those books. I related to Laura as the middle daughter, and I thought it might be fun to make corncob dolls or maple candy from snow, or maybe churn butter. But I didn't want to live like the Ingalls family, isolated, fighting against literal plagues and pestilence, near starvation and never-ending snow. My mother continued, "Think of all the adventures our family will have." Our covered wagon arrived at the height of the summer of 1985 in the small Nebraska town. It had a population of just over 5,000, including the students who attended the college where my father would teach, and the surrounding farms where they raised cattle, corn, soybeans, and pigs. It was quiet, flat, stifling, and the smell of cow manure hung in the air, always. During our search for a place to live, we also had the opportunity to see what the town had to offer in its 2 square miles. A theater showing a movie that had played in Virginia 6 months earlier, a bowling alley, a dozen or 2 small restaurants and shops, and the county's only library in a small converted house. The Dairy Queen held court at the main intersection as the only fast food within 30 minutes. And we also learned that the farmers gathered at the donut shop every morning to listen to the radio and talk about the local news. It was somewhat like Little House, in that it felt like we had traveled back in time. My older sister was lucky enough to be heading back to the East Coast for her sophomore year of college, but my mother was looking for activities for me and my little sister to fill the time until school started. Our realtor put my mom in touch with Mrs. Yu, who taught piano to his son. As it turned out, the realtor's 14-year-old son was Mrs. Yu's star pupil. Piano Guy, or PG for short, was an incredibly gifted musician. His lessons were directly before mine, and I would hear beautiful, complex pieces through the door to the studio. Mrs. Yu introduced us, and she told me that PG was also very smart and polite. On the side, it seemed she was trying to play matchmaker. Though I would have welcomed a friendship with him, or anyone, PG and I were both very shy, and Mrs. Yu's romantic overture made things awkward. My mom assured me I'd make friends once school started, except when we went to enroll me, the decision was made to skip me to the 9th grade, owing to some rather significant differences in education between this town and Northern Virginia. I would be starting 9th grade at the age of 12, while most of the other freshmen would be 15. My first day was terrifying. I wanted to hide how young I was and blend in as best as possible with the 200 or so other kids in the school. I stood out though. At 4 feet 8 inches tall, my older corn-fed, farm-working classmates towered over me. Almost all of them wore t-shirts and jeans or overalls, and they wondered why I was so dressed up in my carefully chosen blouse and khaki pants. I found the 9th grade social studies classroom as quickly as I could and took a seat. The girl behind me tapped me on the shoulder. Without introducing herself, she said, "Are you 12? That's what I heard." I didn't want to lie, but I'd hoped to hold on to my secret at least until the other kids got to know me. "Why does it matter?" I replied. Other kids were looking at us, obviously eavesdropping. "It's true." Evidently, one of my father's colleagues had told his daughter that her new classmate was 12, and she told a few friends, and the word had spread quickly. The rude girl behind me pointed across the room. "Have you met her yet?" I shook my head no, but she would be my very own Nellie Olson. Nellie was short, though still a few inches taller than me. She wore glasses and her blonde hair formed tight curls. The rude girl continued, "Nellie's always been the smartest kid in our grade. But I guess you must be smarter since you're only 12. I liked school and getting good grades, but I was not interested in an academic rivalry. I knew that comparing intelligence and achievements was not the way to fit in or make friends. Thankfully, the bell rang and the conversation ended. Nellie sat behind me in choir, and she introduced herself to me that very first day. She had heard about me from PG. Nellie explained that they had been best friends for years because they were both so smart and always in the same classes. Everyone expected that they would someday date and get married, but she assured me she wasn't interested in him like that. I think that was followed by more boasting about how smart she was. While Nellie was loud and conceited, we did have some things in common, chiefly knowing what it was like to stand out at school. We would talk before choir, often joined by PG. Before long, we had become friends. Occasionally, Nellie and I would call each other in the evenings to talk about homework or choir, or sometimes PG. During one of our calls in early October, Nellie asked me if I was going to the homecoming dance. "No, just the football game," I replied. Homecoming was a little more than a week away. I was excited my parents were letting me go to the football game since social activities in the town were few and far between. "Well, PG wants to take you to the dance, but he's too shy to ask you, so he wanted me to ask you for him." I'm sure I squealed with glee. No one had ever asked me out before. But there was a rule in our house, no dating until 16. "Nellie, I have to ask if I can go. Let me call you back." I hung up the phone and ran downstairs to tell my mother. Her immediate response was, "No, you can't go." I begged her, explaining that this was my chance to fit in, offering that she could drive me and I'd just meet PG at the school for the dance, suggesting an early end to the night. It wouldn't really be like a date at all. Somehow, this worked on her, and she convinced my father to let me go too. I called Nellie back to tell her I could go to the dance with PG, and we hung up so she could call him and tell him the good news. I was excited and nervous the next day at school. I had always had friends who were boys, but this would be my first date. My mom told me I should accept PG's invitation to the dance in person. As I looked for him in the halls, it felt like the other kids shared my anxious energy. Finally, there he was, just before lunch. He came up to me, and before I had a chance to thank him, he stammered out, "I'm really sorry." I was confused. Why was he apologizing? "I heard what Nellie did." And then my heart sank. PG hadn't asked me to the dance. Nellie had made it all up. Our conversation was excruciating. He explained that he just didn't like to dance and he had no interest in going, but he felt really bad. We parted awkwardly, knowing we'd see each other for choir in less than an hour. As I walked away, I felt every eye upon me. This explained that anxious energy that I felt earlier in the day. Word had once again spread quickly. Everyone in school knew about Nellie's vicious hoax. Humiliated, I ran upstairs to the payphone to call my mom. I wanted her to come get me, but she convinced me to stick it out because I'd have to face Nellie, PG, and the other kids sometime. In choir, I kept my attention focused forward and spoke to no one. My tears flowed for a long time when I got home from school that day. I had finally started to feel at ease in this town, and Nellie's cruelty erased all of that. She called me that night to say, "It was just a joke between friends," and she hoped I'd take it better than PG had. Evidently, he didn't enjoy this public humiliation either. She wanted to smooth things over with me to help their friendship. I didn't want to make things easier for Nellie, but I wanted to play it cool so she wouldn't know how deeply she had hurt me. Besides, this town was so small, I had to make peace with her. There was no escaping Nellie. My mom told me I could still go to the dance if I wanted to. So the following Saturday night, she drove me to the school. Wearing my new black and white sweater, jeans, and red flats, I was every bit as scared as I'd been at the start of the year. The dance was in the Commons on the first floor of the school where we ate lunch. I met up with a couple of my girlfriends and we talked and waited to be asked to dance. I didn't really expect PG to be there, but there was a part of me that couldn't help but hope. I danced to one song with a boy from choir and to a couple others with my girlfriends. And soon it was 9 o'clock and I had to leave to meet my mom outside to go home. On Monday, I heard from several of the kids that PG had come to the dance, arriving just after I left and was looking everywhere for me. I saw him right before choir. "You were looking for me at the dance? I thought you weren't going." "Well, I wasn't, but even though I hate to dance, I wanted to dance with you. I couldn't find you." "I was there for a while, but I had to leave at 9. "Oh, I didn't know you'd have to leave so early." The bell rang, and abrupt as it seems, that was the end of it. I made it through the rest of that school year, thanks in large part to some friends, some older kids in choir who befriended me after Nellie's cruelty. And then my parents announced that we were moving again. PG heard the news through Mrs. Yu, and he called to ask me out to lunch. When he arrived to pick me up, who was there with him but Nellie? After we ate, we arrived at his house first on the walk back. Nellie gave me a hug and wished me good luck. I was delighted that I would never again have to lay eyes on her. And then PG invited me inside his house. He had baked me a cake. I later heard from Mrs. Yu, who heard from PG's mom, that it was the first time he had ever cooked anything. He had to call his mom at work to get help with the cake mix instructions. It was sweet, but as we hugged goodbye, I knew he was not my Almanzo. Life in a little house on the prairie was not my destiny. It seemed like it was more of a John Hughes teen drama. And so I rode east into the sunrise toward our new home in New York, singing, "Don't you forget about me."